Do you ever wonder if animals can sense danger before we can? If they can feel a presence in your home that you can't yet see? I learned the hard way that they absolutely can, and I learned it too late. My name is David, and I'm a high school history teacher. I live alone in a small house in Portland, Oregon, that I bought about 4 years ago. It's a 1970s colonial with a finished basement, a decent kitchen, and plenty of space for someone who doesn't have a family yet. The house sits on a quiet street lined with oak trees. Most of my neighbors are older couples or young families, the kind of neighborhood where people know each other's names and leave packages on porches without worrying about them getting stolen. I've always felt safe there. I felt safe right up until I didn't. I have a cat named Milo. He's a gray tabby, about 7 years old, the kind of cat that's just calm and accepting of life. Milo is not a nervous cat. He's not easily spooked. He sleeps most of the day in various patches of sunlight throughout the house. He's the definition of a comfortable house pet. For the first 3 years I had him, his personality never changed. He would eat, sleep, use the litter box, and occasionally demand attention by sitting on my keyboard while I was grading papers. It was a predictable, stable routine. But about 6 months ago, something shifted with Milo. It was subtle at first. He started spending more time staring at the ceiling. Not just looking up occasionally, but genuinely staring at the attic access point in my hallway for long stretches of time. Sometimes he would be sitting on the floor, completely still, his head tilted back, looking at the access panel like it was the most interesting thing in the world. I thought maybe he was hearing mice or something. Old houses have rodents sometimes. It's just part of the deal when you buy a 1970s house. You accept that you're going to have occasional pest problems. I bought some traps. I didn't think much of it. Then Milo started doing something else. He would walk to the hallway and sit directly underneath the attic access panel, and he would vocalize. Not meow in his normal way. A weird, chirping sound. A sound of distress or alarm. It would happen at random times throughout the day. Sometimes at 2 in the morning, sometimes in the middle of the afternoon. Whenever I heard it, I would go check the hallway, and there would be Milo sitting in the exact same spot, staring up at the ceiling, making that sound, and then he would get up and walk away, like he had delivered some kind of message that I was supposed to understand. I mentioned it to my sister when she came over for dinner one evening. I told her that Milo had been acting weird, staring at the attic, making strange noises. My sister, who knows animals pretty well, said that cats could sometimes sense things that humans couldn't. That they had better hearing and could pick up on movements and sounds that were completely imperceptible to us. She suggested that there might be something in the attic. Maybe a family of raccoons, maybe something bigger. She recommended that I have someone come check it out. But I didn't. I told myself I would get around to it. I told myself it was probably nothing. I was busy with school. I didn't have time to deal with potential pest problems. About 3 weeks later, I came home from school around 4 in the afternoon. It was a Friday. I had papers to grade, so I planned to spend the evening working at my dining room table with a cup of coffee, and probably too much frustration at the quality of teenage essays about the American Civil War. I dropped my bag by the door, unlocked my house, and stepped inside. The house had that specific smell that a house has when no one has been in it all day. A little stale, a little warm from the afternoon sun coming through the windows. I locked the door behind me and walked into the kitchen to get water. That's when I noticed something. A sound. From above my head, in the attic. It was unmistakable. The sound of movement. Not the scurrying sound of a small rodent. The sound of something larger. Something moving deliberately. Footsteps. Slow, careful footsteps, like someone walking across the attic floor trying not to make noise, but failing because the house is old and the floorboards creak. I stopped moving. I stopped breathing. I just listened. The footsteps continued, back and forth. A few steps in one direction, then a few steps in another, then silence, then more footsteps. And I stood in my kitchen with a water glass in my hand, and I felt my entire body go cold. Because in that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that there was someone in my attic, not an animal, not a raccoon, a human being, living in my attic. I put the glass down slowly on the counter. I didn't want to make noise. I didn't want whoever was up there to know that I'd come home and heard them. I walked to my living room, and I sat down on the couch, and I tried to think clearly. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe it was the house settling. Maybe it was wind pushing something around. Maybe I was being paranoid. But I knew that I hadn't imagined it. I had heard footsteps. Deliberate, human footsteps. There was someone in my attic. I got my phone out and I called the police non-emergency line. I explained the situation to the dispatcher. I told her that I had heard noises in my attic that sounded like footsteps. I told her that I lived alone and I didn't know if someone had gotten into my house. The dispatcher stayed on the phone with me. She asked me if I wanted her to send officers to check the house. I said yes, absolutely yes. She told me to leave the house immediately and wait outside for the police to arrive. She told me to leave my doors unlocked so the officers could get in if they needed to. That seemed counterintuitive, but I did what she said. I walked out of my house and I sat in my car in the driveway. The sun was starting to lower in the sky. It was getting toward evening. I sat with my hands shaking and I watched my front door and I waited for the police to arrive. It took about 10 minutes. 2 patrol cars pulled up to my house, their lights not activated because this wasn't an emergency. It was just a possible break-in. 2 officers got out of the first car, a man and a woman, both in their 40s. They looked professional. They looked like they knew what they were doing. The male officer walked up to my car and asked me to explain what I had heard. I told him about the footsteps. I told him about Milo staring at the ceiling. I told him that I'd been away all day at work and had just gotten home. The officer listened carefully. He told me to stay in my car. He and his partner went into my house. I watched them disappear through my front door. I watched the open doorway, and I waited. Minutes passed. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. I couldn't see what was happening inside. I couldn't hear anything, just the ambient sounds of the neighborhood. A bird singing, a distant dog barking, traffic from the main road several blocks away. Then I saw the officers coming back out. They were moving deliberately but calmly, not running, not reacting with alarm. They walked back to my car and the male officer told me that they had checked the house thoroughly. They had looked in every room. They had checked the basement. And they had checked the attic. There was nothing. No one. The attic was empty. I felt relief wash over me. I felt stupid. I had let my imagination run away with me. I had heard the house settle or wind moving something, and I had convinced myself that it meant something sinister. The officers assured me that it was a common occurrence. People heard noises in their houses all the time, old houses especially. The officers told me to call back if I heard anything else suspicious. They gave me their non-emergency number. And then they left. I went back into my house. I locked the door behind me. I tried to go back to my normal evening. I tried to grade papers. But I couldn't focus. I kept thinking about those footsteps. I kept replaying them in my mind, trying to convince myself that they had been something innocent, something explainable. But the more I thought about it, the more I couldn't shake the feeling that the police hadn't actually checked properly, that they had maybe been too cursory, that they had just assumed it was nothing because I didn't have any concrete evidence. Milo was acting differently when I got home. He was agitated, pacing. His tail was puffed up. He was making that strange chirping sound again. He kept going to the hallway and looking up at the attic access panel. And I finally made a decision. I was going to check the attic myself. I was going to get a ladder, and I was going to open that access panel, and I was going to see if there was any evidence that someone had been up there. I found the ladder in my garage. It was a standard aluminum ladder, nothing fancy. I carried it into the hallway, and I positioned it underneath the attic access panel. The access panel was one of those things where you just push up and it lifts out of the frame. It's not secured. Just fit it into place. I climbed the ladder. I pushed up on the panel. It moved easily. I pushed it up further into the side so it was out of the way, and I poked my head up into the attic. It took a moment for my eyes to adjust to the darkness up there. The attic had some light from a small window at one end, but it was dim. I could make out the basic structure. The wooden beams. The insulation. The plumbing and electrical lines running across the space, and then, as my eyes adjusted further, I saw something. In the corner. Something that didn't belong in an attic. A sleeping bag. A pillow. A stack of canned food. A bucket. And scattered around those items, evidence. Photographs. Printed photographs. Dozens of them. All of me. In my house. I don't remember how I got down from the ladder. I don't remember much of what happened in the next few minutes. I know that I called the police again. I know that I screamed at them that they had checked wrong, that there was someone in my attic, that I had found evidence. The dispatcher told me to get out of the house immediately. She told me to go to a neighbor's house and wait for police to arrive. I grabbed my keys. I grabbed Milo, who was still agitated, and I put him in his carrier, and I left my house. The police arrived within 5 minutes this time. This time they came with lights activated. This time they came with more than 2 officers. They had weapons. They went into my house, and they came back out, and they found him. In the attic. A man named Richard Carlson. 34 years old. A stranger. Someone I had never met. He had gained entry through my roof about 6 months ago. He had been living in my attic the entire time, watching me through the gaps in the ceiling, taking photographs, documenting my life. He was arrested. He went to trial. He was found guilty of breaking and entering, stalking, and voyeurism. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison, but those 5 years don't undo the 6 months. They don't undo the knowledge that someone was living in my house, watching me, in my bedroom, in my bedroom, in my bathroom, in every private moment I thought I was having alone. I moved out of that house 3 months after the police found Richard Carlson. I couldn't stay there. Every creak of the floor sounded like footsteps. Every noise made me think about the fact that someone had been up there, breathing the same air, occupying the same space. I sold the house at a loss. I moved into an apartment building with security cameras and a doorman. I still don't sleep well. I still check my locks multiple times before bed. I still look at the ceiling and I feel that specific kind of dread knowing that someone could be up there. Anyone could be up there. And Milo knew. The entire time, Milo knew that something was wrong. He was trying to warn me. He was doing everything he could to communicate that our space had been violated. And if I had listened to him instead of dismissing it as typical cat behavior, if I had trusted his instinct instead of rationalizing the problem away, I could have discovered Richard Carlson months earlier. I could have protected myself from 6 months of unwitting exposure. The truth is, our animals know things that we don't. They perceive threats that exist below our conscious awareness. And if your cat is staring at your ceiling and making distress sounds, maybe it's not being weird. Maybe it's trying to tell you that something is fundamentally wrong. Maybe you should listen.